Maybe you're not broken. Maybe you're just in the process of being reborn. There are moments in life when everything seems to fall apart at once, when the certainties that once sustained us simply dissolve into thin air. Rumi said, "The wound is the place where the light enters you." But no one talks about what happens in the first seconds this light pierces the darkness. It doesn't come softly, like a calm dawn. Sometimes it explodes, so intense that before it illuminates you, it blinds you. Spiritual awakening isn't a romantic scene. It's brutal, profound, and uncomfortable. It comes to tear the veil from your eyes, to reveal what you didn't want to see, and above all, to show you who you truly are, without masks, without disguises, without illusions. That's why it hurts. Because the truth, when it arrives, doesn't ask permission. It enters tearing, burning away everything that isn't essential. Have you ever felt like you were losing control of your life, even though you're doing everything right? Have you ever wondered why? The more you try to hold everything together, the more things seem to slip through your fingers? Maybe it's not bad luck. Maybe it's the call. The call Rumi described not with logic but with poetry. A whisper in the soul telling you it's time to wake up. But waking up hurts, because it means admitting you were living asleep. It means recognizing that many of the choices you made weren't really yours. They were inherited patterns, camouflaged fears, desperate attempts to be accepted. And waking up, my friend, doesn't negotiate lies. It shines light on dark corners, exposes the wound, and invites you to look at it without running away. And here's the most paradoxical part. This pain you feel isn't a sign of failure. It's a sign that something inside you is changing shape. It's the same discomfort a seed feels before breaking its shell, the same tightness a butterfly experiences before leaving its cocoon. It's uncomfortable. It's confusing. But it's the beginning of freedom. Have you ever noticed how, the moment we begin to awaken, everything around us seems strangely out of place? People, places, conversations, nothing fits together as it did before. What once satisfied you now seems empty. What once hurt you now reveals itself as part of your fabric. It's as if your whole life has been a dream, and suddenly you open your eyes to a world where the colors are more vivid, but the light hurts in the first moments. Rumi knew this. He knew that the path to freedom passed through the realm of pain, and that's why he said the wound is where the light enters, because it's precisely at the point where you've suffered the most that your greatest strength can be born. But at first, we don't see it. At first, all we feel is the cut. Maybe, right now, you're in that crossroads. Maybe you're in the midst of chaos trying to understand why nothing seems to make sense. And I need to tell you, it's not the end. It's the transition. It's the moment when the ground opens up for you to find wings. It's the moment when life begins to strip you of what isn't yours. But what if you resist? What if, out of fear, you try to sew back the old chains? That's when the suffering lingers. Because awakening isn't something you can ignore forever. It knocks on the door. It insists. It seeps through the cracks until you finally face it. And when you do, you discover that the pain you so feared was just the passage. The problem is, most people try to go back to sleep. They try to block out the light, return to the familiar shadows. But something has already changed. And you know it. You feel it. You can't unlearn what you've already seen. You can't unhear the call of your soul. And this is where everything begins to intensify. Because this moment isn't just about hearing beautiful words. It's about feeling each syllable touch the deepest part of you. It's no coincidence that you've come this far. There's something inside you that knows it needs to hear this. Something that recognizes the truth hidden between the lines. But for this message to continue resonating and reach other souls who are also on the threshold of awakening, I need your gesture now. If any phrase resonated in your heart, write it in the comments. I choose freedom, even if it hurts. This isn't just a comment, it's a public declaration to yourself, a silent commitment that you're ready to move through the pain and find the light. And when you write, you're not only affirming it to yourself, but also inspiring others who will read it and realize they're not alone on this journey. Leave your like. This isn't just another video lost in the vastness of the internet, but rather a meeting point for souls seeking healing and truth. And subscribe now so you don't miss the next reflections. Each new video will be another piece of this emotional and spiritual puzzle we're putting together, where each part reveals a little more of who you truly are. Do you feel like after certain moments in your life, nothing is ever the same again? It's as if there's an invisible line dividing what you were before and what you become after. Once you cross that line, there's no going back. It's as if you've seen something you can no longer unsee, as if a curtain has been torn away, and the scene beyond is simultaneously frightening and liberating. Spiritual awakening doesn't arrive as a gentle whisper. It's an earthquake in the soul, a profound shock that breaks down internal walls and exposes what has been hidden for years, perhaps a lifetime. And the most intriguing thing is that it rarely chooses a convenient moment to occur. On the contrary, sometimes it begins precisely when you most want to rest, when you believe you found some peace after so much exhaustion. It's at this moment that the ground you thought was secure begins to crack. Conversations that were once comfortable now feel superficial. Places that once brought you pleasure now feel strangely empty. The people you surrounded yourself with suddenly seem to be speaking a language you no longer understand. And worst of all, you try to adapt again, try to fit into your old life, but you no longer fit. It's like trying to fit into a garment that's shrunk too much. It's tight, uncomfortable, suffocating. This is the invisible problem. It's not something the world around you will immediately understand because from the outside you may look the same. You still smile in photos, still fulfill your obligations, still say everything's fine when asked. But inside there's a silent volcano, a restlessness that won't go away. It's a feeling of displacement, as if you're living between two worlds, the old, which no longer serves you, and the new, which hasn't yet fully revealed itself. Spiritual awakening is in part painful because it breaks invisible bonds. It distances you from identities you carried as if they were absolute truths. It forces you to face your loneliness head-on, to acknowledge how many times you hid behind social roles to avoid looking at yourself. And it is at this moment that the soul begins to cry out silently, asking for authenticity, asking for freedom, even if that freedom costs you your old life. And the most paradoxical thing is that when this happens, you try to cling even tighter to what you know. You hold on to friendships, relationships, routines, and even old habits that have proven harmful, simply because the new is scary. But every time you try to return to what was, the pain increases. It's as if life is telling you, this is no longer where you belong. You might even ask yourself, why now? Why not before? Why when everything seemed to be falling into place? But awakening doesn't follow human logic. It arrives when your soul is ready, even if your mind isn't yet. And when it arrives, it doesn't ask permission. It dismantles, deconstructs, and disorganizes because it needs to make room for something greater, something truer. And there's something few people say. Awakening hurts not because something is wrong, but because you're freeing yourself from what was never truly yours. It's the shedding of imposed expectations, limiting beliefs, and memories you've carried like chains. It's the emptiness that arises when you let go of the old but don't yet know what the new will bring. And this emptiness, however uncomfortable, is sacred. It's in it that transformation germinates, silently, until it blossoms. Maybe you're exactly at that point right now. Maybe you're feeling lost, unsure of where you fit in. Maybe you're wondering if this discomfort will ever pass, if you'll ever feel like you belong again. And the truth is, where you belong isn't out there. It's within you. But to find it, you have to go through this phase where everything feels uncertain. The invisible problem is that no one talks about this journey. Everyone romanticizes the outcome, but few show the process. And it's during this process that most give up, trying to return to the before as if it were possible, when in reality, that before has already ceased to exist. That's why recognizing where you are is so important. It's the first step to not getting lost along the way. If any part of this touched the truest part of you, I want you to leave just one sentence in the comments. I have crossed the invisible. It's not just a comment. It's an acknowledgement. It's you affirming that you see what's happening inside you and that you're willing to keep going, even if the path isn't yet clear. What hurts isn't the awakening. It's the death of who you thought you were. This is the part no one prepares you for. Because spiritual awakening doesn't just come to give you pretty answers and comforting metaphors. It comes to dismantle the very foundation you believed to be your identity. Rumi wrote, "You have to keep breaking your heart until it opens." And deep within that phrase lies a frightening truth. To open, the heart must break. And not just once, but repeatedly, until all fear, all control, and all illusion have crumbled. The pain you feel in this process isn't just the loss of something external. It's the loss of an image of yourself that you've carried for years, perhaps your entire life. This image was shaped by expectations, by other people's opinions, by wounds you tried to hide. It was built as a shield, a mask, and you believed it was you. Spiritual awakening comes to tear away this mask, not gently, but with the force necessary for you to see the difference between who you are and who you believed you were. And here's why this transition hurts so much. The heart, by nature, clings. It clings to stories, people, memories, dreams that may never have truly been yours. Even when these things no longer serve you, the heart insists on holding on to them as if the pain of letting go were greater than the pain of keeping them. But the truth is, until you let go, there's no room for the new to arrive. It's this resistance that hurts. It's this attempt to keep alive something that's gone that causes the wound. The spiritual root of awakening lies precisely in surrender. It's not about fighting pain or trying to understand it in every detail, but rather about accepting it as an inevitable part of the process. It's about recognizing that some deaths are necessary for a truer life to be born. When Rumi talks about breaking your heart until it opens, he's talking about breaking down the walls you've built around it. He's talking about making room for light to enter, even if that light, at first, burns like fire. And perhaps the hardest thing to accept is that this light doesn't come to reinforce what you think you are. It comes to dissolve everything that is false. It illuminates not only the beautiful and inspiring parts of you, but also the parts you've tried to hide, the unhealed wounds, the shadows you've avoided facing. And at that moment, many try to run away. They try to distract themselves, numb themselves, put on the old mask again. But once the light has entered, there's no way to escape its presence. You can even try to close your eyes, but your consciousness has already been awakened. This is where the internal struggle intensifies. Part of you wants to move forward, to break free, to open yourself to the unknown. The other part wants security, to feel the familiar comfort, to maintain the old narrative. This silent war within yourself is exhausting, but it is also the field where your new identity begins to form. It is in the friction between letting go and holding on that you begin to feel the true power of surrender. And at this point, you begin to realize something essential. Spiritual awakening cannot be rushed. It is not a single event, but an ongoing process, like layers that are gradually peeled away. Each layer that falls may bring new pain, but it also creates more space for freedom. It's a constant paradox. To feel light, you must bear the temporary weight of mourning for who you believed you were. The spiritual root of this entire process lies in the fact that pain is a teacher. It points out where you're still stuck, where you're still denying the natural flow of life. When you feel your heart breaking, it's not a sign that you're wrong, but rather that you're at the exact point you need to be for transformation to happen. Awakening requires courage because letting go of who you were is a leap into the dark. But paradoxically, it's in this darkness that the purest light reveals itself. And perhaps upon hearing this, you'll realize that much of what you call who I am is actually a collection of stories. Stories that began before you were even born, passed down through generations, reinforced by experiences that shaped how you see the world. And now, you're faced with the opportunity to rewrite everything. This opportunity isn't comfortable, but it's real. So before I continue, I want to invite you to reflect on a single sentence and leave it in the comments. I let go to open myself. This phrase is more than words. It's a choice. It's an affirmation that you recognize that you're in this process of breaking open, and that despite the pain, you're willing to go through. What no one told you is that awakening doesn't come to destroy you. It doesn't come to destroy you, but to destroy what was never truly you. The difference is subtle, but transformative. And it's precisely because this difference is difficult to perceive at first that so many people mistake the process for punishment, when in reality it's a profound act of liberation. Awakening comes to tear off, firmly, and without asking permission, the chains you've grown accustomed to carrying. And that's the point. You've grown accustomed to them. You felt them for so long on the wrists and ankles of your soul that you no longer even realized they were there. You walked with the weight, breathed with the weight, loved with the weight. Perhaps you even convinced yourself that these chains were part of who you are. Freedom hurts because it requires you to abandon this version of yourself that wasn't real, but was molded as if it were. And abandoning an identity, no matter how false, is never a light act. It's as if you've lived for years inside a cramped, dark, windowless house and suddenly someone opens the door to an open field, full of light. It feels like a gift, but the first reaction isn't to run. It's to retreat, because the light hurts the eyes, the cold wind frightens. The silence of the open space is uncomfortable for those who have been accustomed to walls. Awakening is this opening of the door. It shows you that there are no locks blocking the path, only the fear you've harbored. The hidden key, the one few perceive, is understanding that the pain that accompanies freedom isn't a sign that something went wrong. It's a sign that you're crossing the threshold between who you believed you were and who you truly are. And in this crossing, everything false must fall. And falling hurts because it mingles with memories, with affections, with stories you believed were eternal. Deep down, we don't just fear losing things. We fear losing versions of ourselves that were forged in the affection of others, in the approving glances, in the small achievements that built our narrative. Spiritual freedom requires leaving behind not only the obvious prisons, but also those that seem like comfort. It requires you to undo silent pacts with people you loved, with ideas you defended, with dreams that no longer belong to your essence. And every time you let go of something like this, you feel a void. This void is the space that truth needs to enter. Awakening isn't about adding more layers to your life, but about stripping away all that was excess. It's a process of stripping away, of finding yourself in what is pure and simple. And precisely for this reason, it feels so much like a loss. Because society has taught us to believe that we are defined by what we accumulate. Things, people, titles, stories. But the hidden key to awakening is realizing that to become who you truly are, what you need is to let go, to empty yourself, to allow nothingness to make room for everything. This understanding doesn't come automatically. It's built in the silence of nights when you wonder if you're doing the right thing, in the discomfort of no longer recognizing your own desires, in the strangeness of looking in the mirror and not seeing the same person you saw before. It's an intimate, profound process, almost invisible to outsiders, but one that changes absolutely everything. It's as if your gaze gains a new lens, and you suddenly begin to see life with a clarity you've never had before. This clarity can be frightening at first because it leaves nothing hidden. Awakening is an invitation to live without illusions. And this, for the mind that has learned to protect itself with them, is like walking without armor. You feel vulnerable, exposed, sometimes even fragile. But it is precisely in this vulnerability that true strength is revealed. Spiritual freedom is not a stone fortress. It is an open field, and your safety lies not in the walls, but in the confidence that even without them, you are capable of fully existing. And that's where many hesitate, because abandoning a version of yourself is, in a way, a mourning. And mourning requires courage to not run back to what's familiar. What you need to understand is that what's falling isn't you, but what was preventing you from seeing yourself. With each chain that breaks, you come closer to your essence, and this closeness is the true goal of awakening. Now I want you to reflect on something. If you knew that by letting go of everything that isn't yours, you would finally find peace, would you be willing to let go, even if it hurts? If your answer is yes, then write just one sentence in the comments. I open the door. Because saying this is more than a phrase, it is declaring that you recognize the hidden key and are ready to cross over. Maybe you're experiencing this right now so intensely that even talking about it seems to touch something deep inside you. Perhaps it started subtly, with an unease you couldn't explain. That strange feeling that, suddenly, certain conversations no longer interested you, that certain places no longer sparked the same spark within you, that certain people seemed distant, even when they were physically close. Little by little, you've drifted away from the people, places, and habits that once defined you. And at first, it felt confusing, even painful. After all, how is it possible that what was once so familiar now seems so distant? You started saying no to invitations you'd previously accepted automatically. You began to realize that the table full of familiar voices no longer welcomed your silence, that the noise no longer drowned out what you felt inside. Places that had been the setting for important moments began to feel cold, almost irrelevant. Even habits that were once your comfort zone began to feel like a burden. That series you watched without thinking, that repetitive conversation you had just to fill the time, even that coffee with someone who, deep down, wasn't really listening to you. All of it began to lose its meaning. And along with these changes came something that was perhaps the hardest to face: emptiness. Where once there was routine, predictability, and even a certain emotional security, now there's a silent space. And this silence, for someone who's always been surrounded by stimuli and movement, can be frightening. You wake up and you don't have the same busy schedule of meetings, the same need to prove yourself to someone, the same list of obligations that seem to keep your life in order. In its place, there's a strange time, a space that seems to scream to be filled, but you don't yet know with what. This emptiness can easily be confused with loneliness. You look back and feel as if you've lost something important, and in a way, you have, but not something that was truly yours. What fell away was what prevented you from realizing who you are without external influences. What's gone are the distractions that occupied the space that is now free for the new to be born. And that's where a crucial point comes in. This space isn't a punishment, it's an invitation. An invitation to get to know yourself in a way you may never have allowed yourself before. It's the opportunity to fill your life not with what keeps you busy, but with what keeps you alive. But to do so, you must resist the temptation to rush to fill the void with anything. You must endure the pause, the silence, the discomfort of not having immediate answers. Maybe right now you're looking at this space and thinking you don't know what to put in it, and it's okay not to know. Spiritual awakening doesn't hand you an instruction manual. It gives you an open field and invites you to explore. It's in this field that you'll realize that what truly matters doesn't arrive in a hurry. New connections, new places, new habits, they will all come, but not to fill a hole in a hurry. They will come to add meaning. This void is also a mirror. It reflects the parts of you that were hidden beneath layers of obligations, expectations, and noise. It shows you your own shadows, but also your light. And the more you face this reflection, without trying to escape, the more you begin to understand that there's nothing wrong with being in this space. In fact, that's precisely where transformation begins to blossom. Think of fertile soil. Before receiving new seeds, it needs to be weeded, it needs to rest, it needs to be ready. If you plant in soil still choked with old weeds, nothing will grow as it should. The emptiness you feel now is this clean soil. It's the silent preparation for something that, when it arrives, will make sense in a way the old never did. And yes, during this time you may feel the urge to go back, to reconnect with old connections just to quell the feeling of absence. But remember, every time you return to what you already know isn't useful, you delay the birth of the new. Life is asking you for the courage to hold this open space even if it feels cold and uncertain. It's asking you to trust that when the right seeds are planted, you'll understand why you had to wait. This is the moment when many people give up on the process. It's the moment when the discomfort of not knowing seems greater than the hope of what's to come. But if you've made it this far, it's because your soul knows there's something much greater on the other side of this silence. And when it begins to fill, it won't be with more of the same. It will be with what truly nourishes your essence. So I want you to tell me in the comments just one sentence. I am space for the new. Write this to affirm to yourself that you understand that emptiness is not a loss, but rather the purest opportunity that life can give you. You are not the pain. It may even seem that at this moment it occupies everything within you, that it merges with your body, your thoughts, your way of breathing. But it is not your identity. It is not your destiny. You are the one who walked through the fire and discovered you could walk on the flames. And that changes everything. Because when you begin to realize that you are not the pain, but the one who survived it, the weight begins to transform. It doesn't disappear immediately, but it reorganizes itself. The pain, which was once a wall, becomes a portal. Spiritual awakening at this point stops being just a process of loss and becomes a process of revelation. You begin to see that everything you've been through wasn't meant to destroy you, but to show you what you're made of. And I'm not talking about a cold, rigid force, the one you use to pretend everything's fine. I'm talking about a silent, profound force that arises from the simple fact that you looked at your own shadow and didn't run away. Rumi said, "Don't be content with stories of how things happen to others. Awaken your own legend." And herein lies the key to this shift in consciousness. Understanding that your life is not meant to be a repetition of other people's narratives. No matter how many examples of overcoming you know, how many books you've read, how much advice you've received, your story needs to be lived by you. Only you can walk through your own fire. Only you can transform your own ashes into something new. This is the stage where pain stops being just a burden and becomes fuel. You begin to realize that every experience that tried to break you was actually shaping your inner structure. It wasn't easy. Some nights seemed endless, some tears seemed endless, and there were days when the world seemed too big to face. But you're here, and being here is proof that there's something inside you that pain couldn't erase. When this realization sets in, you begin to look at the past differently, not as an enemy but as a harsh teacher. You understand that each loss was a kind of polishing, each absence an opening, each silence an invitation to listen more. It's as if suddenly the pieces of the puzzle begin to fit together. Not all at once, but enough for you to see that there was always meaning, even when it seemed like chaos. This shift in consciousness also changes how you see yourself in the present. You stop waiting for something external to come and rescue you. You're no longer sitting by the side of the road waiting for someone to reach out and tell you everything will be okay. You realize that you're the one who decides whether everything will be okay. And this realization, as frightening as it may seem, is liberating, because it takes the power away from pain and gives it back to you. And that doesn't mean the suffering disappears completely. It means it no longer controls you. It may be there, like a mark, like a memory, but not like a prison. You learn to walk with it, no longer as a weight that weighs you down, but as a story that propels you forward. Pain ceases to be the protagonist and becomes just a part of the scenery. When you awaken to your own legend, you realize there's no single formula. Each person will go through it differently, at a different time, with their own internal battles. But there's one thing everyone who gets here has in common: the awareness that life isn't happening against you, but through you. This changes how you react, how you decide, how you dream. And perhaps at that moment, you'll begin to feel a strange lightness. Not because everything is resolved, but because you understand that you no longer need to carry the weight you once did. It's like dropping a backpack after walking for miles. The road continues, but the feeling of freedom is immediate. This internal shift is silent but powerful. It doesn't need applause or external recognition. It's an intimate pact, a decision you make with your own soul. I am not the pain. I am the one who has gone through it. And from that moment on, you begin to live with a different kind of courage. Not the kind that shouts to the world, but the kind that silently keeps walking even when no one is looking. I want you to leave this in the comments now, not as a loose sentence, but as a commitment to yourself. I walk on flames. Because when you write, you not only declare what you already know, but you also reinforce with every word that you are ready to continue your own legend. If you've made it this far, it's because something inside you knows this message needed to be heard. And that says a lot about your courage and where you are on your journey right now. Embrace the discomfort, because it's the sound of your soul expanding, the sign that you're going through exactly what you need to transform. Subscribe to the channel to continue this journey with me, because awakening doesn't end here. It only deepens, and each new video will be another step in building this new version of yourself. Leave your like so more people can find this message and begin their own journey. And now don't stop. The next video is appearing on the screen right now. Click and continue diving even deeper, because your soul has already said yes to this transformation.